Saket Modi, the CEO of Lucideus Tech, and Senior Advocate KTS Tulsi here with us to discuss this issue further. Mr. Tulsi, let me start by asking you, sir. You, of course, were one of the advocates during the right to privacy discussion in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has categorically held that Indians, every citizen does enjoy the right to privacy. But just coming back to what the TRAI is saying, it's very categorically stating that the current framework for data privacy and protection is insufficient. Now, we're still waiting for the Sri Krishna Committee's recommendations. It will then be up for public consultation. Then the draft will, have to go through its checks and balances before it even makes it to Parliament, if at all it makes it to Parliament. And we don't know if that'll happen in this year or whether it'll happen in the tenure of this government at all. Does this not make us very vulnerable, Mr. Tulsi?
Of course, it makes each one of us very vulnerable. The point is that my phone is part of my personality. It's my personal property. The contents of my phone, even the calendar of my phone, the contacts, the names, the numbers, and my relationship with my friends is all private and personal. It's my property. It's exclusively my property, and the terms by which consent is obtained are all fraudulent, because you are stuck in a particular step, and unless you say yes, it doesn't go forward. So it is actually extorted, the consent. And I believe that I have not bartered away my freedom, my privacy, by just hiring a service company, a service provider. They are only giving me connectivity, but that doesn't mean that my life is in their hands, or all my private life comes to an end. It can't happen like that. If it is not protected, people's lives could be in danger. And this is
absolutely.
I believe,
so you welcome the TRAI's recommendations?
I welcome, and I believe that if my data is misused, it amounts to theft, which is a criminal offense. It amounts to cheating, and I also believe it's a breach of contract. It's a serious criminal criminal offense and civil wrong. It's a different matter. Supreme Court has already laid the foundation for this, and I'm glad that there is further clarity on this by TRAI.
Right. Let me go across now to Saket. Saket, these are recommendations that have been put out by the TRAI. We are still awaiting the Sri Krishna Committee's reports. These recommendations are not binding, but it gives you a sense and tells you about the direction that we're likely to see being taken forward. What is this now going to mean as far as app developers, as far as content providers, browsers? I mean, the whole gamut of the tech ecosystem is concerned.
Sheeren, first, I think it's a very positive thing. I mean, as you very rightly mentioned, anything digital is an ecosystem of a lot of kinds of players. And any regulator talking about cybersecurity talks about how serious this is getting. And of course, seeing GDPR, seeing this and seeing where things are moving, it looks very good. Now, to the point of what the TRAI makes, let's understand that TRAI fundamentally controls the telcos, which are ISPs, which are internet service providers. Now, if you really think of it, they have three categories of super critical information in their own hands when it comes to consumers. Number one, when you sign up with the telco, you give your personal details to the telcos, your personally identifiable information, that is, and the custodian of that is the telco itself. Number two, when you're calling somebody, you're actually, there's a data creation, the call detail records, including your SMSs, your, call logs, etc., etc. All of that is also owned by the telco. And the third and the very interesting piece is where the geos of the world are moving towards, where they say, why do we only want to be a telco? We want to give a geo world to our users where they can actually access channels and, browse movies, etc., etc. And we want to take it one step beyond just being a telco. Now, these are the only three categories where you can broadly categorize the users of a telco and how the data is being stored by the telco.
Yeah.
Now, when TRAI says be serious about security, he's talking about this. However, the browser and the applications and the right to be forgotten.
But what about the issue? What about the issue of ownership, Saket? What about the issue of ownership? You just detailed for us what becomes available to a telco when you sign up with a telco, but the TRAI in its recommendation very clearly saying that the owner of the data is the consumer and the telecom company can only act as a custodian.
Absolutely. And this is the three categories of data, Sheeren, is what I'm trying to say, where the owner has to be the user who's giving that data. However, the segregation I'm bringing in out here is when you give your data on Facebook, which is connected through a geo internet, that does not mean geo has any role to play there. I mean, there geo really can't do anything about it. So the encryption standards that needs to be used are Facebook's call or a Google's call or a Gmail's call. But really, telcos cannot do anything about that. But there is so much more that, the telcos did, and that's what I divided into three parts. That is where the data they are handling becomes very crucial. And that's where the security of that, the ownership of that on the consumers becomes so crucial. Yeah.
Okay. Nikhil, first your comments on the overarching guidelines, recommendations that the TRAI has put forward. And just to take that point forward that we were making with Saket, the TRAI also recommending that since we don't have a data protection framework in place that is sufficient today, what we should look at is the possibility of extending the license conditions of telecom service providers to apps, browsers, etc. as well.
So I don't think it's about extending the license conditions, but we're saying that for the time being, until a law is in place, the notification should be such that they apply to them. So that's not a license condition as such. But Sheeren, the most important and most positive part of the TRAI recommendations is giving users the ownership of their own data. Now, we don't know how this is going to apply on a practical basis when it comes to apps and devices that store data. But what the TRAI has given people is the right to revoke consent, which is very important. There is no pre-tick box consent. They have the ability now, they should have the ability to delete pre-installed apps. So one factor which I think is a little confusing is that they said that the right to be forgotten should be applicable to telecom operators. For me, that right, so if you look at the right to be forgotten law, that is only applicable to search results and removal from indexing of search results. So how this is going to be applicable to telcos beats me. It does not make any sense as far as I can see, because right to deletion of data is very different from the right to be forgotten. Telecom operators don't have search results at all. That's what Google has. But if you look at the most important aspect, is actually what is not there in this paper, in these recommendations, which the TRAI has avoided commenting on, which is data localization. That is the raging debate at this point in time, given what the RBI is doing, given what's being said about the Sri Krishna report. There is no mention of data localization in the final recommendations. So the TRAI has not taken a stand.
Okay, the TRAI not taking a stand. Very quickly, Nikhil, what is your position on this very vexed issue of data localization? MNCs are up in arms saying that this will in fact put India at a disadvantage. It will hurt India's competitiveness. The Reserve Bank is given till October for at least payment operators to ensure that data is localized. Your take on that?
So if you have data localization, that impacts the decentralized nature of the internet. Today, a startup can go and host their data anywhere else in the world, and therefore they have the efficiency of scale in operation there. So this impacts the startups. From a user's perspective, India is actually a less secure location to keep data because there is no privacy law. I, as a user, would be much more secure in the EU, which has very strong privacy protections for data, even if I'm not an EU citizen. So unless India comes up with a strong data protection law, there should be no localization. Even then, how does it matter which jurisdiction you are in if the law protects you there? What is the only reason why they're pushing for data localization is for mass surveillance of citizens, which I don't think is the right reason to have data localization.
Okay, that is your conjecture, but Saket, very quickly before I let you go, would you agree there with Nikhil that the TRAI has stayed away from this issue of localization, and do you also agree that data localization is not in the garb of privacy and protection is not the best way forward?
So the second answer first, Sheeren, I totally agree with Nikhil. There needs to be the right kind of security framework, privacy framework in place before you mandate localization of data, because it can only make the matters worse, because everybody will be forced to get their data in India, but then when a hack happens, you don't know what to do. It's not that you don't know what to do, but it's not sufficiently enough. Yeah. The second part of whether, TRAI is shying away from talking about it, again, I think let's not talk about what it is not spoken, because it's their call and they understand the regulations in a better way. But from what is spoken, I'm very, very happy about that. And I just see a clear intent of talking about how important security is, and all the telcos need to look at it in the right way.
All right, Saket Modi and Nikhil Pahwa, appreciate you joining us here to talk about the TRAI recommendations that have been put out just a short while ago.